I very strongly believe that women's careers are so important to them because it brings a certain sense of financial inclusion, it brings a certain sense of independence, and it also creates access to platforms that you wouldn't have if you were to take the normative paths that often exist for women, especially in our country. Having said that, I'm not going to waste any more time. I really want to engage our stellar speakers in a conversation. So, setting that stage, I'd like to invite, I think, Sarika, we'll start with you and then go to Kavita and then Kuntal on your insights and inputs on especially this framework that we're discussing today, which is accessing changes in careers that we'd like to see.
Hey,
Over to
thank
you.
you so much, Shreya. This was thank you for setting the stage, and also I really loved the analogy that you've done with the one pot meal. I'm going to use it in the future. Credits to you. Yeah, so I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and through these years, more than 10 job stints with various different companies in very different domains and different sizes and whatnot. For me, when I started, it was not something that I thought of. Unfortunately, life threw a curveball to me, and I had to take a break with under 2 years of work. I was to be on a bed rest, and hence I had to let go of my job. When I was well again, I interviewed and interviewed and interviewed for almost a month. Every single day, I was interviewing with one company or the other. Finally, I got something, and I picked up the first offer I got at that time. Uh, but when I left that one and then I made so many more changes in my life after that, there were a couple of things that I learned from this forced exit that I had. One was that for me, it's fairly easy to pick things up. I realized that because this second job was in a new domain altogether, I knew nothing about it. And I did courses, I read books, and then I picked up those skills which were required. And the second thing is that I really loved exploring this new space. So for me, the fact that I really enjoy learning phases is also something that I learned at that time. And from that point onwards, a lot of my career choices or a lot of my job changes were driven by my personal life, what was happening in my personal life. I took a break when my daughter was born. I started working again after a few years, and then things didn't seem like they're going well. So I wanted to work part time. Again, it was like a personal choice that I took. Had to move cities because my spouse changed jobs. So again, there was a change. But through all of these, I think I kept on going back to that first experience that I can do it, and it's fun, and I started enjoying it more and more and more. And that's what my journey has been. Last few years, when I was doing these change after change, I was a little bit more mindful of which kind of roles I pick up. I wanted to make sure that I'm not only learning, but I'm also using the skills that I have built so far and building an impact for the organization that I am with. And that worked wonders. Eventually, realized that this is what I want to do. I don't want to be tied to a project or a company, which is where my current setup is.
Thank you, Sarika. I so totally agree. I think if you notice, I think if all of us notice, those career transitions that we chose that came out of being and feeling empowered and confident about it happen to work so much better than those that we took when we felt disempowered, when we felt desperate, when we felt, oh, we need to pick up anything that comes our way. And you put it so beautifully when you said, every transition kind of adds to your learning. We often
Absolutely.
think that, when something like this happens, it sets you back, but that's not true. It actually pushes you ahead because you've learned so much. And the next transition comes with that much more ease. So thank you for sharing that, Sarika. Kavita, inviting you for your comments and your journey.
Yeah, thanks, Shreya. And really nice to know, the experiences of Sarika. And I would say not exactly same, but then, the transition from Indian Air Force to the corporate world has been quite a big change. And even during Indian Air Force, though Indian Air Force is one of the modern organization, if I have to really compare between Army, Navy, and all three forces. But then I think how I differentiated my own mindset, being into be it into my engineering college or then be into the profession, is that I have to remove this tag of being a girl, and neither I would ever want anyone to be comparing myself. So probably ours was the first batch wherein we were very vocal around saying that we would not want to call ourselves as lady officers. So that is something, wherein we started, I mean, realizing the changes and, trying to make the changes. And then if I have to say, the cultural change from Indian Air Force then to corporate, it has been a big one, but again, of the firm believer that probably it's your own agility to the change, right? You do not have to change the organization setup to fit in, but you have to be agile yourself so much that you do not feel and not let the organization feel that, it would be very difficult for somebody coming in from a government organization to the corporate world and they would not be a good fit over here. And then within I also did take a sabbatical of an year, and I do agree with Sarika that as an women, we do tend to take a lot of pressure because the ecosystem we are in. But then I would say each one of us need to recognize that there is a personal responsibility as well. And in this race of career and all, and absolutely, it is not about compromising, but then it has to be your own self-led choice that you should, basically. Uh, uh, so that when you are working, you are giving your 100% rather than, as you mentioned, Shreya, in the very beginning, that if it is not passion led, then you are not basically enjoying the journey and not able to contribute enough. And then I joined Alcatel Lucent after Indian Air Force. That was for a short span of 2 years. But then Ericsson, wherein I actually got my really, really good breaks. And within this 10 years, I completed 10 years in Ericsson. So I call myself now more Ericssonized than Indian Air Force. And then within Ericsson, this is my seventh change of job role. So that way, I think, the organization has given me enough. But what I can say and add on to Sarika is that every previous experience add on to your new domain. And one thing which I just quickly want to call out quickly for the technical people, if at all we have that kind of audience today, is that never ever forget that anything which is being done in a company, in a unit, in an organization comes with a pack of money, right? So technical doesn't mean technical. You need to keep in mind the commercials around it, and this is where the differentiators are when there are some technical people who are rising and shining, and then there are some technical people who are just being code technical, and that's absolutely fine. But then just keep those things in mind. So again, saying the previous years add on to your newer experiences, and this is where the wisdom keeps getting building in. Yeah,
Kavita, you
thank you.
bring up such an important aspect of wisdom. And I think as women, we're often grappling with so much, right? And it is essential that we show up for our families, for, things that need us. As primary caregivers, it's not that the environments are suited to really push us into echelons of success directly. They are designed in some form to keep us, keep our heads down. And corporates are also not designed. And I love what you said about not calling ourselves lady officers, right? Because so often the bias that we carry is within ourselves, it's not outside us. And, we put ourselves into that box. The most guilt we feel is the guilt that we carry as mothers. I have 11-year-old. So, when all of you speak about your children, I realize that very often the shame, the guilt, the chaos that's running is often more in our heads than around us. So you spoke beautifully about really, stepping that aside, putting it away and saying, okay, let's do the next thing. Let's do the next thing. Let's do the next thing, 7 shifts in 7 different formats. And I completely agree. I'm a firm believer that when I'm dancing, I'm learning something that I can apply in a boardroom. When I'm in the boardroom, there's something that I can apply in my on the dance floor or in my dance class. And I think that cross learning, you spoke so beautifully about it. Thank you so much for that. Kuntal, moving to you. You seem to have such an interesting mix of interests and ideas, and what you're doing also sounds very, very fascinating. So we'd love to hear your insights. Go ahead.
Sure. I'll give a little background so that there's context, because I feel when I saw the title, I was like, oh, I actually have been jumping around quite a bit. I started off as a strategy consultant after my B school, and I thought I'd be doing the regular path of going up, up, up. And then I actually went to Northwestern and did a master's out there. And that's where I discovered my love for data and analytics. It wasn't called AI in those days. It was called data and analytics. And I found the happy medium of not just loving it, but being good at it, right? So I was like, hey, this is where I'm going to be. And this is what I'm going to focus on. And I'm going to kind of like look at building out a career or a path which is involving being the bridge between modeling and businesses, or how do you leverage data, right? So that kind of became something. I didn't know what it would translate into, but that's what it kind of became. And I think the first half of my career is defined by being an algorithm developer or model builder slash like consultant at various Fortune 500 companies in the US. And then the latter part of my career, when I moved to India, was a massive switch where I became a builder and operator at startups. And I suddenly was doing product and marketing, and which for me was, I think when the opportunity came my way, I was kind of like, I've never done this. And I was 32 or 33 at that time. So I was like, this seems a little bit of an oddball thing to do. And I gave up other opportunities on the table around analytics and AI, which were actually like pretty high level as such. But I was like, this kind of sounds interesting. I thought, worst case scenario, if it turns out to be a disaster, I'll go back to the previous options that I had, right? So that's how I kind of thought about it. And then that's what kind of led me down my journey of becoming a product operator, builder in the startup scenario. And then finally, I started something of my own, which is a fashion tech company that uses AI and a human stylist to identify styles that you will love. I think I don't know about you guys, but I think everybody hears and, you come across these people who are like, oh, this is my 10-year plan. This is my, 5-year plan. This is a 20-year plan. I remember when I used to meet those people when I was young, I'd get so intimidated. I'd be like, I'm like lucky if I have a 2-year plan, right? I'm lucky if I have, I'm just like, what is it exactly that I'm going to do? And I think, I mean, if I look back at my journey, I I wouldn't have even thought about being a founder when I had started. I mean, at that time, entrepreneurial, whatever you want to call it, spirit was not that high when I graduated from school. I didn't even think about being a founder when I lived in Silicon Valley, which is the heartland of innovation and entrepreneurship, right? I moved to India, which I found so friction driven that every 2 minutes I was thinking about, like, I want to build something. I want to build something. So things can come in from anywhere, right? I don't think it's kind of like a set journey. The only thing that I have kind of figured out as I go from role to role is that, yes, there is something that I'm looking at in the next 2 to 3 years that I want to add on. I may not be very, very clear about what exactly I want to do, but I'm very clear about what I don't want to do. And I feel that at least you should start getting from your roles, right? So when I moved from consulting to industry, the biggest thing for me around consulting was, I mean, the biggest issue, and don't get me wrong, I loved consulting. It fit my personality to a T. It was fast paced, super sharp people, multiple things. So it really worked well for me. What I didn't like was the sense of ownership or the lack of ownership that comes in, right? You go in, you do something, and then you walk out. And that is what I realized. I needed to be more involved. I needed to be doing something a little bit more tangible and more long term. And that's how I moved to the industry. So I think you need to kind of, my biggest thing is that, you'll have feedback, reviews, appraisals, all of that, but you really need to kind of keep talking to yourself to understand what is it that is going on within you and where is it that you're at. That I think becomes very, very critical.
Oh, that just reminds me of that sweet spot when you intersect your personal interests and
Yeah.
when you have, the aspects of your personality that are feeling joyful about the kind of skill sets that you own, and then you merge that with your purpose. I couldn't agree more. Isn't it when I see women, being in absolute control is when they are not at all wanting to be in control. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
true. Yeah, that's true.
When they're just going with the flow, when they're having an amazing time, when they're creating these careers for themselves, not by design, like you said, no 10-year plan, no 20, no. Today, this excites me. So I'm going to engage and immerse myself in this fully. And
Yeah.
when you play with that every day, I mean, thank you so much for that insight, because we often forget to play. We often forget that our careers are like a playground,
Yeah.
and that we really need to engage in that joyfulness and that play, because if you're not having fun with your careers, which are probably going to last you a really long time, children are
Yeah.
small, they grow up, they leave you as empty nesters, husbands may come and go, families, surround you, or are not, or you may be living somewhere else, but the one thing that you have is your career. And I think it's so beautiful to play with it. And thank you for bringing that element of play into the conversation. I think it's so lovely to listen to all of you and your stories. It just reminds me every time that when you bring a bunch of women into a room, it's just so powerful to just hear them and their stories. So the first piece of today's puzzle is identifying when to shift gears, right? So how do you identify some of the common challenges that you're facing when transitioning to a new career path, and how do you overcome them? One, how do you identify? Two, what are some of those challenges that could come your way? And how could you identify them? We'll again go round robin. We'll start again with Sarika. Sarika, you go, and then we'll come to Kavita and Kuntal.
Yeah, so Shreya, in terms of how to identify, you need to shift, right? One thing that, like Kuntal was mentioning, if you don't love it, if you feel like there is something lacking, there is something that either is not working for you or you really want and is not there, that should be a trigger to think about it. If the culture is not right, you have a team that's not supportive, you have a manager that's not supportive, that's tearing you down instead of building you up, then probably you need to think about it. If there is something that really excites you, so it doesn't have to be always a push, right? It could also be a pull towards something that really excites you. So if you find something that really excites you, go for it. I Amazon has this really good leadership principles. One of their principles is one-way doors versus two-way doors. In
Yeah.
career, there's never a one-way door. It's always a two-way door. You go ahead, you try it. If it doesn't work, like Kuntal said, you have to have that confidence. I can come back to it. I did exact same thing. In fact, when I was leaving Google and joining a startup, there was a lot going through my head as to the stability and the large brand name that I'm leaving behind. But the fact that it's not that I can't come back is something that should empower you to make that transition, because it's never a one-way door when it comes to your job. You will carry the skills that you have, you can always come back. Yeah. About when you actually make the transition, transitions are not easy by design, right? Because you are going from a place where everybody knows you, you've built an expertise, and you are going to start from scratch. My philosophy, and I've done a lot of transitions, my philosophy is every time give yourself some time to pick things up. Think of it as a honeymoon period wherein no one expects you to actually deliver anything. And that's true. When a new person joins your team, you don't expect them to deliver from day one. You give them a month or a 2-month period for them to pick up the skill. So use that honeymoon time to talk to people, build relationships, understand where things are, ask as many questions as possible, shadow your peers, do all of that. Don't even assume that you have to be productive from day one, because you don't expect others to be productive. So cut yourself some slack. Give yourself that honeymoon period.
That reminds me of Alice in Wonderland when she's stuck with so many doors and she doesn't know which door to go through, right? It reminds me of how the curiosity that is described of Alice when she's she says it's getting curiouser and curiouser. And I think just to have that childlike sort of curiosity when it comes to looking at things gives you objective distance. It's very hard when you're going through it, especially when you're looking at transitions and you're in the midst of it, to have that objective distance. But a little bit of sense of humor, I think, goes a long way to be able to look at yourself and say, who are you playing today? So moving to Kavita. Kavita, do share with us your thoughts and inputs on those transitioning moments and what those challenges could look like.
Yeah. Okay. Probably I'll be sharing from all the experiences which I had, and probably you know the kind of moments which helped me in making a decision that probably a transition is now in near future, near sight. So I call them as, basically a sponge saturation. So when I say so, that means that when the sponge is saturated, it doesn't hold any more water, and you're done and dusted with it. And that's the time wherein you start looking for the change, because then the next day when you're joining your workplace, it is going to be a very, very mundane thing, and probably nothing exciting for you, right? So that's one thing, probably has been my mantra, wherein, and if I'm saying that 7 career changes within Ericsson, I have been lucky enough. It's not that easy, but I have been able to find those kind of changes with that approach, right? Another is wherein I call, wherein there is an accident reaction, wherein you do not plan to be, having any transition, but then by accident, you meet some stakeholders wherein, and you discuss with them, and then you suddenly realize that, okay, probably what I have been doing is fine, but then this is going to be my next step, because the kind of work which is happening in that particular space is really, really excites me. So I think, and then third is wherein when you start feeling that within this kind of scope, you have stopped making an impact. Because I think it is really, really important that if you are not making an impact, then move on, start looking, where you can actually make an impact. So I think these are 3, 4 things, which has, of course, come after, learning through the transitions. And then if you have to really summarize that, how you have made those decisions that, okay, now I need to move next. When it comes to, handle the transition, I so agree with Sarika, wherein she says that give yourself some time. During that honeymoon period, I try, I when I talk to my teams, right, and when there is new challenges coming up, and they are a little puzzled and hassled, I always tell them, flow with the flow. Don't apply, don't overthink, right? You need to really give yourself a break, flow with the flow. Let the things will fall in place, right? All you need to do is not to have sleepless nights over challenges, but to be, closing off on time, and rather than to be under undue pressure working over time, you just be within your regular working time, and then just flow with the flow, keep learning, and then keep adding. Another is, maybe, when these transitions happening from one unit to another, what I would call is identify your right mentors, and identify the people who influence the things. Because it is so important to know the right stakeholders. Otherwise, your journey can be very challenging. And in a corporate world, in a corporate politics, it is so important for one to understand. And third, and very, very important for me, and I learned this from a very Selu person in Ericsson, that you make a relationship when you do not have a business. You don't make relationship when you have business with them, right? So again, very, it seems a simple statement, but think over it, and you will realize that you don't make relationship when you have some work with some other person, right? So yeah, that's.
That last one was so poetic. It just has me thinking. And thank you so much for structuring it so well, because I think often when we're in the midst of this, it's, we do have a tendency to overthink. There is an imposter syndrome, playing with questioning our own identity, playing with self-doubt, playing with voices in our head, playing with societal constructs, all of these juxtaposing ideas. But I think when you talked about the tools, which is stop overthinking, apply something as a tool. and I keep saying this to people, I'm like, bring it to your body. The body never lies. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score. And it's interesting to say this. I know it's a, semi-tech audience, etc. But I also love this sponge analogy. When you're full, you're just full. Also, we grew up in an environment, remember, where we weren't given too many options, right? From a career perspective. बेटा तू इंजीनियर बनेगा और या बेटा तू इंजीनियर बनेगी was or doctor banegi was most, at least from the years that I grew up in, that was the only construct and narrative, and anything you chose outside of that box was very threatening to the people that were in our ecosystem at that time. And it was mostly the rebels who got away, or people who really refused to study and get good marks, that got away with some careers that they actually chose, whereas most of us were put into this box. So I remember growing up in an environment that also didn't support, this plethora of options that are available today. So I think it's great for, the Gen Zs today who have all of these options available to them. It's massive privilege. We didn't have it growing up. So thank you for bringing in all of those little bits of nuances, nuske, as you call it in Hindi, to really think about it. So Kuntal, coming to you. Oh, this conversation is just amazing. I'm so happy. Thank you all so much. I'll keep sharing gratitudes as we go, but Kuntal, over to you.
Look, I think kind of, repeating some of the things that we've been discussing, like what Sarika and Kavita have said, right? And what I said before, you need to kind of be talking to yourself and understanding that am I being challenged? Am I learning? Am I excited about going into work? And of course, you don't have this every day. That would be unrealistic. But for the majority of the days, do you have it, right? That kind of can give you an indication that, okay, maybe I need to be thinking about something else. But I also wanted to add an element of just pure, practical aspects. I mean, we often hear this statement of, go for your passion or do what you feel passionate about, right? Every role may not be that. Sometimes there may be other practical considerations that you have to have. It could be financial, it could be personal. I think, Sarika, you spoke about going part-time for some time, right? And it's absolutely okay. It's one step in the journey. And I think be very clear about the fact that this is what you're here for at that point, and deal with everything else that comes along, right? You, at a certain point in time, when it comes to your career or your shifts or your job, there are primarily maybe max, I think, two things that you can try and optimize for. You can't try and optimize for everything. It's not going to happen, So just kind of say, okay, this is what it is. This is how I'm looking at it, and it's temporary. I think that's something that we forget, that any role that we take up, it's temporary. It's not permanent. It's not fixed. You don't have to be at it for a lifelong scenario. Yes, you hope that you can be, right? But you're not tied to it. Nothing is that permanent, So I think we forget that, and we get really stressed out about it when we're, especially when you're younger. It's kind of like that whole thing that, oh, if someone has missed a class or has stayed back in class, right? At that time, it seems so shameful, or it seems so horrible that they failed a year or they had to skip a year. Now, when you look back, you're like, I can't understand what the big deal was. So what? I mean, but it's the same thing even with your jobs, right? So I think that's something that you need to kind of keep in mind. For those people who are looking at a career change or thinking about a career change, I mean, I think, first of all, kudos and congratulations, right? I think the majority of people stay in the same career, keep going up and up the ladder, making lots of money and looking like, they might be happy, but intrinsically they're not. And then they wake up at the age of 50, 55 and wonder where all their time has gone, right? They didn't take that step. They were too worried of getting out of their comfort zone, and they've just kind of continued. But I think the most important thing in terms of aside from what Kavita and Sarika said about learning and kind of having your mentors and like being open. I mean, being open to things. I think what I also wanted to add, as they said, right, don't stress yourself out. I mean, whoever has hired you with the awareness that you're not a perfect fit. So, I mean, they're not like dumb that they're kind of thinking you're going to be a rock star from day one, which means you have to also show the humility and the willingness to learn and to be kind of open, right? And I think most of the times what's going to come up are going to be soft skills versus hard skills or technical skills, because that's something that we're kind of learning anyways, hopefully, as we go along. And so I remember, like, I mean, I think the two things which for me were quite kind of stand out in my career journey, and I just wanted to share them. One was when I moved from Fortune 500 global companies to a smaller company, though now in retrospect it isn't that small, but it was just one location, right? And I had built an algorithm model, and the business partner that I was working with, he and I were on great terms. And then he's like, "Is it ready? Is it ready?" Because he was very excited about it. And I said, "Yeah, it is almost, but I need a few more days because I want the model score to be higher." Now I was so finally then after a week I went ahead, presented, he loved it, we rolled it out, etc. Blah blah, great success. But afterwards he came back and he asked me that, what was the model score before and what was it afterwards? So I said, the model score was like 65 and I got it to like 72 afterwards. And now I'm coming from, consulting firms, Yahoo, large corporations where you want to be like 100% sure about what you're putting out there. And he said, "Okay, that's great. But, for that increase of less than 10%, you cost me a week's time." He's like, "I'm operating on zero information, right? You had 60% confidence. You should have given it to me." And I said, "You know what? You're absolutely right." So, where are you walking in? What is going to be appreciated? You need to kind of understand that. And the only way you will is by listening, keeping your eyes open, and then also saying that, "Okay, am I comfortable with this?" Right? Like, I know other analysts who are not comfortable with putting stuff out that is 60% done. They want to be as close to 100% as possible. So it's a conversation that you're having. I think similarly, when I took on my first leadership position, I ran into someone who was the Microsoft AI leader, and we were chatting, and I said, "Oh, it's yeah, I find myself being less involved in building models or looking at what's happening, and I'm speaking and like I'm educating a lot of people all the time." And he said, "Yeah," he's like, "Welcome to leadership." He's like, "50% of my time is spent in communicating," and he said, "If you don't like it, and if you don't believe in lifting the culture and helping people along the journey, then maybe you should think about SME kind of a path, right?" He said, "Then don't think about being a leader or a manager, because that's what you'll have to do." And I was like, "Yeah, he's absolutely right. I can be an individual contributor and just be an expert." Luckily, I liked it once I realized that, okay, this is what it involves. So I think keep yourself open to what the role is, and it involves a lot of humility. It involves getting rid of a lot of your own thoughts, and you're a rock star, right? I think everybody's walking in, they're a rock star, but you will need to give up something about yourself.
I love that. It's so poetic. And I love what you said about, often we think of bliss as a thing that we want to achieve, or like that excitement, ecstatic joy. Actually,
Yeah.
what we need to aim for is pleasant, because pleasant is stable. Bliss is
Yeah.
when you're hitting the high points, and those high points are not going to come every day. But if you're at
No.
pleasant and you're not going to hit those lows, and you're managing to keep it at pleasant, both the lows and the highs become a lot more manageable. So, I mean, and of course, the last piece that you spoke about, which is in terms of just being open to the fact that you also could intrinsically change with, you know, age changes you, hormones change you, like
Yeah.
perimenopausal women. I mean, I've just hit perimenopause, and I'm just wondering what's happening to me, right? And it's so sad that we don't understand this. Forget the fact that our careers and the environments that we're in don't understand it. We
Yeah.
ourselves are in denial. But when you start accepting it, then you know what to work with and what to let go of. Yeah, of course. We should talk about miscarriages, perimenopause, staying at home to take care of our children, of elder people in the house. All these are conversations that are as much a part of our career. And I remember Aparna Jain, who wrote Lady, You're Not a Man, had spoken about how your careers will only demand your attention at some point in time. And your
Yeah.
families will only demand your attention at some point in time. It's about being able to balance those in absolute cohesion. And I'll never forget that because it just resonates with you. It's like, oh, yeah, 24/7, you're not needed, With that, we have a poll. I know Arushi is waiting with a poll. So, Arushi, you can go ahead and launch the poll while I ask my next question this absolutely scintillating panel. Karen, what is the time that we had set aside for this? Was it an hour?
We have about exactly 18 minutes left before we went.
We'll make the most of the 18 minutes. So I'm going to
Yeah.
flip this around into a slightly higher paced, not exactly a rapid fire, but like a higher paced round so that I can go around. And Kuntal, we'll start with you and go in reverse in quick succession, one after the other. If you can tell me what strategies or resources, the top three that you can think of, are most effective for women looking to retrain or upskill, especially when they're changing careers.
I think I'm going to list out broader things aside from, like, I'm not putting down specifics. But I think networking, yeah, and network actually even when you're not looking to change. I think network throughout. Courses online, tons of stuff available. Reading, those are the, reading, especially when it comes to soft skills or even stories of people who have built something. Those are the three that I would actually look at.
Kavita.
Yeah, okay. So quickly, maybe I would say stretch assignments are really a good thing wherein one can, get exposure to, other things wherein they are looking for, and it's just like a temporary assignment which can give you a flavor. Another is, I think, reading newspaper daily is what I will highly recommend because just for the mention from a technology perspective, technology used to be at the back end always, but now technology is everything. It's at the front end. So I think even in Shark Tank, just to give a quick view that everyone asks around that what's the technology, and how much of the percentage of the technology is in your product. So I think, yeah, these are the two things apart from what Kuntal has already said.
Sarika.
Yeah, I would say if you have a role in mind, find people who are in that role, approach them, talk to them, figure out what are the skill set that is needed and whatever is the missing pieces that you don't have. Have the similar conversations with your mentors and your manager. If you are looking for a role, talk to them and see if they feel you are ready. If they feel you're not ready, where are the gaps? So it's just ask for it. Go and ask them for that assignment that you're looking for, that you would want to do, even if not today, at some point in future. You never know. They might feel you are ready today, so you don't have to wait. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
For our audience that was listening, you just got 9 really strong hacks in terms of careers and in terms of what you can do with your careers when you're at crossroads. Remember to take notes because you never know when these will come handy. Of course, there are poll results that are coming through as well. So do take a look. We have some interesting poll results. We have a huge amount of senior leaders in the audience today. Coming to obstacles that women encounter when aiming for senior leadership positions, because we do have a lot of senior leadership roles today in the audience, how can these barriers be addressed? Again, 3 things each, and we'll go in reverse now. Sarika, we'll start with you and Kavita and then Kuntal.
I think the first and foremost is our own mindset. Many a times we feel we are not ready. We feel that I need this skill and that and that. So that we have to sort of push back and just talk to people and ask for things. For me personally, the first time it sort of hit me was I was in a workshop at Google when I was there. I was working with them where they said men apply for roles when they are 60% ready and women apply for roles when they're 100% ready. That was such a like a light bulb moment for me. And my life has changed since then. So attend those workshops. Those are like really, really important. The leadership workshops, the things which help you with self-promotion, talking about your work. That is really, really important because we tend to not do it. We sort of think of it as bragging. And even though it is all facts, we still think it's bragging. So build that skill, build the skill of talking about your work.
Wonderful. Personal branding is I mean, I don't like that term for it, but I think it's important to position yourself right and really delve further deep. And I love what you spoke about self-work, because I think that's the most important work. I love this quote which says, when you start changing what's going on inside of you, what's going on outside of you changes. And I think that's so relevant across all spectrums. Kavita, coming to you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just compliment what Sarika said, but in a little different way of not having any time self-doubt. And when I say so, there is something which you own, cook up, and then there are something which are cooked up by other people, but don't believe them. Please don't believe them, and just be just have confidence in your own self and keep moving ahead. Another thing which I would say is that again, speak up and keep challenging the status quo. And though and then at the same time, within the same breath, I can say be visible. But then these are two different things. Wherein speak up and challenge, maybe people would not like it. Your own peers, your own senior superiors. But then there is someone who, if you are speaking sense, there is someone in the system who is taking note of it. And then of course be visible, and of course you talk about your work, but then again, you don't really need to be 100% ready to show your work. You need to be incremental. That's very important, right? Because in this fast pacing world, nobody's going to wait for you. So even if you have a slice of the idea, go and project it.
I mean, again, amazing hacks, especially when you think about the landscapes that we navigate. We don't have room to be doubting ourselves. And I remember this beautiful quote that my professor of NLP keeps saying. He says, when you take on the voice of the abuser, you become your own abuser. That person's left. But our self-doubt is within us now, and we've taken on their voice, and we're doing this to ourselves. And he keeps reminding everybody that you have a choice. Take that voice out of your head. You have that choice. So thank you for bringing that up. Kuntal, over to you.
I think kind of piggybacking off what Sarika and Kavita said, but one of my favorite books has been this book called Be Brave, Not Perfect. And it's written by Reshma Saluja, if I'm not mistaken. And she talks about how, as women, we are geared to kind of, as you said, step out when all the pieces are, in place, and we don't jump, right? And it talks a lot. And in fact, she runs an organization for girls in tech in the US. And so it's a thin book. Go through it. It's actually pretty interesting, even if you think that you're the person who's jumping and you're the person who's racing ahead. While you read it, you'll find that there are elements of this in your being and your psyche that are driving you to do certain things. So I think that's, one. Two, I think, the thing that I've actually learned along the years, and because for a lot of us in this group, one of our primary constituents or one of the primary people that we work with are engineers and are male engineers, right? And they have the highest level of confidence that will be projected onto you. And sometimes that confidence is fantastic. You need to be confident in the workplace, but sometimes their confidence is also not backed by anything. So don't don't get pushed into a corner. Be okay about stepping up and fighting for your point of view, because the chances are it's also coming, like whatever they're saying may not be coming from the right place either. But they're just saying it with such confidence that it sounds like they're correct, right? And the third thing is, I personally have always had great male mentors, and most of my managers have actually been men, right? I've also had mentors who have been men, and I think that's something that is useful and it is needed, because at the end of the day, you're not operating in a women-only environment. So if you are succeeding, if you want to succeed, you may have, I mean, there are, yes, definitely different circumstances and things that women go through. But at the end of the day, from the organization's perspective, they're going to look at what are you bringing to the table, right? So when you're playing that game, if you have somebody who can guide you on those lines, it's actually great. So find a mentor, a male mentor. If you have a male manager, great. I mean, just go ahead and get what you need to figure out what it is. And a lot of men are actually interested in having women be in the workplace. Sometimes they're blind to like situations, right? Like some of the most I would say rara women kind of men I know. I remember like years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I just said, if networking events are organized in the night, how do you expect women to attend them? And he's like, oh, right. So it needs education and awareness from our end as well. And so they're happy to kind of figure out what can be done. So I think have a male mentor is actually something that I would actually encourage you to do. It could be outside the workplace as well.
Absolutely. And I think both, right? Both ends of the spectrum. You see all kinds of people, and it's often to do with a lot of the gendered narratives, which are as detrimental to the men as they are to the women. And it's so
Absolutely.
important to bring them into this conversation and really have more allies show up who are willing to learn. And there are a lot of them who are willing to learn. It's just that we often don't have the time to start the conversation, or we're doing it in our own little echo chamber because, oh, we're this women's ERG and we're going to talk to other women and we're going to huddle with other women. Bring those men. Like, let them experience what it feels like to be a woman at the workplace. Bring 3 men into an all-woman ERG and tell them this is how we feel every time we're sitting in a table with you all around. Especially with the whole mansplaining thing that Kuntal spoke about. If I had a penny for every time a man in the room took my idea and gave it back to me like it was his, it's often because you've never countered it. And then you have to stop them and say, let me call you in. Let me remind you that you just told me what I just told you. You see the number of women who start a sentence with, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh,
Yes.
I apologize. Why? Why? There's so much of nuance in that as well. And I think these gendered narratives of behavior need to be broken. And I completely agree. Some of the most open, happy to relate with people have been, men in my career. And some of the most painful people have also been men in my career. But you see the full range, and there are people of all kinds. Karen, I think you have a hand up because there's a question that's come up. And
There are two. Some of them have
go
been
ahead.
responded to, but
Let's
yeah.
do the questions.
I think Kavita and Sarika responded to this, but if anyone has anything more to add, how do you handle a change when you're unsure of what you want to do or when you want to do next, since you're unhappy with your current situation? Career counseling could be an option, but I'm uncertain how to proceed. I think if Kuntal, do you have anything to add to that? Otherwise, Sarika and Kavita have.
I think, yeah, I mean, the only thing I was going to say is that if there's a way to do a little bit of a side hustle and if it's not prohibited by your organization, then you could kind of do it. Like, see if you can experience it in some way or the other.
And then another question was, how do you find mentors online? Sorry, Shreya, do you have something to add?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. And the other one was, how do you find mentors online? Is there any platform for mentors we can control?
LinkedIn, right? I mean, LinkedIn will help you figure out, people in your industry and in different networks. And there's the other thing that I wanted to add, right? Like have a thick skin. You know what? You reach out to 20 people and they don't 19 don't respond and one doesn't matter. I mean, again, like, you know what? It's on them, right? So it's totally fine. Like it shouldn't stop. You should not be like, oh my God, like no one responded to me. Yeah, maybe take a look at your message and see if it's making sense or ask somebody to take a look at it. but have a very thick skin. I mean, I have raised money from people through LinkedIn outreach, right? So I'm just saying you never know what can happen, and just develop a very, very thick skin on these things. It's no
Absolutely.
reflection on you.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Shreya, sorry, I wanted to add that we have a mentorship platform on our own,
Yeah, I was
IDW
just going to
membership. So
say, if you're looking for a mentor, reach out to Karen. There's an entire mentorship ecosystem. We can, of course, match you with mentors, etc. But also, from a mentorship perspective, I think first and foremost, identify what you need mentorship for, what you need
Yeah.
a coach for, what you need a therapist for. These are all different roles, and it's first of primary importance to understand what do you need in your life. Do you need a life coach? Do you need um, a therapist, because there's so much that's going on that you would like a safe space to sort of hear your own voice outside of the noise that's surrounding it? Or do you want a mentor to sort of be somebody that you look up to, like the meritocracy that Brenda was saying, that you look up to and you work with? So I think these are of primary importance. This is a conversation that I think deserves a round two, which we'll surely come back to. But I'm going to quickly come to Sarika, Kavita, and then Kuntal for their closing comments, because I do know we're up in the hour and I know it's a Friday. So we're very grateful for everybody who showed up on a Friday evening. This shows how important I think this topic is, and how close it is to people's hearts and wanting to know more. So Sarika, your closing comments, then Kavita will come to you and Kuntal will close with you.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to career, it's okay not to have a plan as long as you are mindful about where you are and where you want to go. And wherever you want to go, talk to people about it, talk to your stakeholders about it, talk to people who are in those roles. That sometimes opens your eyes as to whether you are ready or not. If you're not ready, then what is it that you need to do? Most times, more often than not, women tend to assume they're not ready when they are actually ready. So talk to those peers and mentors and stakeholders who can pull you up and who can help you realize your true potential.
Kavita.
Yeah, okay. So I'll say that you are in a career, you are at a place, professional place, you are lucky enough. And I'm speaking this from India and now maybe global perspective also. So make most of it, enjoy your journey, don't be stressed around it, and take baby steps. And then of course adding on to what Sarika said, that you really do not need to plan out a 5 year. You are not a government who need to run a country, right? So take baby steps and enjoy every day, and try making an impact. When you have that feeling that every day an output from me will make an impact, measure your outputs as an impact. It everyone works hard, but is working hard enough, right? Is it coming, the impact and the value is coming on the table or not? And then yeah, so just enjoy most of it. You are lucky enough to be into a professional career.
Oh, that's true. To be conscious of privilege, I think, is so important. And Kuntal, your closing comments.
So I think in the context of career changes as well as going up the ladder, and maybe it's slightly I mean not controversial but a little bit debatey. Get your house in order, right? If you're going in for something that is going to be demanding, your family, your personal life needs to kind of support that. You need to make sure that you have that set up internally. And that's something that you have to do. You can't expect the workplace to sit and understand all your issues. That's not their job. That's not their problem. So you have to kind of make sure that these are things that you're getting lined up and you're kind of putting into place as you go for certain things. And a lot of women, in fact, there was this study that had come out, I think, a few years ago, which showed that women in India are able to break the glass ceiling far more successfully than their Western counterparts because they have support from their family, including the mother-in-laws, the nannies, all of that stuff, right? So it's not that it's an impediment. It can actually be something that can go towards your success, but make sure you're thinking about it and you're structuring it along the way. That's something that I wanted to kind of just conclude with.
Absolutely. And what powerful points. There are a lot of comments and coming in saying what a powerful hour, etc., etc. I'm going to close this with some reflections from this whole conversation. Crossroads, maybe I'm lost. I don't know. Somewhere I sense a crack. Something's amiss. I don't yield to impulse too soon. And when I do, I always retract. Twice shy, then I forget that in the moments that I give in to pulling down lost dreams from shelves, seldom dusted, within the walls of the mind, bits and pieces of so many things, shards that actually make me whole. So many fingers, so many pies. I wonder what drives that. Fear of failure or really boredom? That I don't finish what I start or I don't start what I want. I wander wondering, questions of self worth, of making a difference, and then I seek answers that don't seem to come. Reality and circumstance, duty and commitment, priorities that demand, and then the world that often mocks these well laid plans. But I go on one step at a time because all I got is just me. So, over to you, Karen.
I have nothing left to say except express gratitude to all of you being here. Arushi, thank you for hosting this, for coordinating everything. Do you have anything to say to add?
I just wanted to say thank you so much to all the speakers for actually coming. I know it was so hard for everyone to align their schedules, but they did a Friday evening. I'm so glad. Personally, I learned a lot as well. I'm also very early on in my career, so a lot of different things that I learned from this session today. So thank you so much. A special, special thank you to Shreya, who also made the time and such a wonderful moderator, if I may say so myself. You were so lovely. Yeah, just thank you so much for everyone who also came to attend the session. And I hope that y'all have, taken away a little bit or two for yourselves. And thank you so much
Yeah.
for
I
coming.
just want to say the Grace Hopper celebration is coming, and I think this is a very pertinent topic. And we'd love to reach out to the three of you and maybe have a wider panel on stage speaking about career transitions. We have multiple tracks that are focusing on executive careers and tech for social good and poster sessions, etc. We'd love to reach out to you. November 20, 21, 22. The dates for the Grace Hopper celebration. It's happening at BIEC in Bangalore. We'd love to have these insights and do a bit more. I know 1 hour seemed very little for just this, but I can imagine like 15,000 people coming to that event, really taking away something from a conversation that goes into this space. So we'll reach out to you and we'll keep in touch, and we'll probably come to you with more
Absolutely.
ideas on how we can curate something like this even on the stage. So thank you all so much.
Thank you
Hearts,
so much.
Thank
hearts
you so
and
much.
love. Thank you for coming. Thank you for attending. Without all of our audience, we are nothing. So audience, thank you for coming as well. So
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you.
so much.
you. Have a
Thank
great
Thank
weekend
you.
ahead.
have a
Bye.
lovely Friday and weekend. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.